My position at the Reynolds School of Journalism is to grow the Spanish language media program. As part of that initiative, we're trying to reach out to potential clients, if you will, within the community, and one of those was the Reno Aces. They approached us actually towards the end of the summer of 2018 with an idea, or actually a need. They needed to somehow find a way in which to connect to that Latinx community. And I started contacting students that I had in the past in different courses.
He asked me to come in one day and he started asking me if I had ever thought about screenwriting, if I knew about any of the Latinx women that were screenwriting right now in the US, and I told him that I wasn't informed. And so we started working on throughout the semester on a scene.
We started doing some research, some initial research into formats that could be done using the production muscle that we have, that were challenging for students, that would teach students valuable skills, and at the same time connecting with a local client, an important local client, and also doing some sort of relevant work.
We started writing about 4 months ago in November-ish. We started trying to lay out the basic idea, and that's where a lot of my effort went into, is just the basic story. I had to rely heavily on people like Lisbeth Alvarez and Ezekiel Corin, members of the Latino community who could help me out and help me relate more to this audience.
I started thinking about my own family. How was I going to write something that was going to interest the Hispanic or the Latinx community? So I started thinking about my own personal relationships and my family's relationships, and that's the main thing that got me started on the script.
I grew up in Venezuela. It's a big baseball country. So obviously my references when we were talking about baseball were back in Venezuela. So when we started looking at it, it was more of a sense, what can I find? Somebody that doesn't like baseball, what can I find that is relatable, that is a space where I can see myself identified?
I think that there's a really large population that isn't currently being targeted, and I think that through this project, that's what we're trying to accomplish, is we're trying to reach this specific demographic and trying to see what their relationships are like and not trying to stereotype any of it.
It's a challenge because one of the things that we see most often are misrepresentations, and it's a huge deal in terms of what that implies both for the Latinx community as well as for the greater, non-Latinx community and how they're perceived.
The idea is just to make a 5-part web series to help the Aces reach a Latino audience, basically.
And the project there turned from simply promoting the Reno Aces in terms of them selling tickets to actually looking for some sort of connection that was relevant for the Latinx community of the Reno Sparks area. Towards the end of December, we got an absolute buy-in. They understood the concept we were going for, and it really came together as a solution for a problem they had, and that they weren't aware that they could approach it this way.
Essentially, it's a hero's journey following our main character, Manuel, and his quest to become a good enough baseball player to progress through the ranks. Along the way, he meets mentors, he has his family support him, he meets enemies.
Entre Nos, it's between us. It's the moments that we have when we're having a conversation, no matter where we are. So I think that it's important because of this project, because everything happens when you're in the stands. What's the family going through? What are the relationships like? How are people talking to each other?
And that's the kind of thing that we wanted to impart on the series. It's that moment that, sure, it's not just in the stands, it's here, it's between us.
My own vision is to have a triumphant kind of baseball story, but my vision isn't the only thing in this project. It's a massive collaborative project, and without everybody on the crew, there would be no project.
Production really requires an assemblage of an entire crew, and how each one has a place in that crew. Here you need everybody from the person that is locking down the set to the one that's writing the script. You need absolutely everybody to pitch in and to pitch in a large amount of effort.
There's 25 or so people on the crew that all have a specific job, and trying to manage all the locations and talent and everything like that is kind of a big hurdle.
Up to now, it's been somewhat light. We're really ramping up once we start shooting. From that first shot until we wrap up, it's going to be a crazy ride. I can promise that.
I already knew that it was going to be a giant project. It was going to be a giant project. So I came into that with that expectation, but I didn't realize exactly how much time it was really going to take.
I mean, we shot 2 night scenes that is extremely difficult to do. Everybody has performed at 110%. As an instructor, many times you would like to jump in and do some things yourself in order to get the course moving along. However, you also have to step back, and you want students to develop skills, and sometimes that development passes by letting them try and by letting them fail.
First time directing is just a series of mistakes. And you don't really realize what you've done until you get either in the editing room or till you reflect on the day. But then you realize, oh man, I should have done that. I might have just ruined the whole shoot. But usually, if you just keep rolling with it, it's gonna be fine.
I think what's interesting about this class is that we come into it and we're given these roles, but there's really nothing that we did beforehand to get these roles. Like, I was just given the role of like this authoritative role. I don't like calling people out. Like, I don't like yelling at them. I don't like telling them what to do. So that was something like I really needed to figure out how to do and figure out how to work with different personalities.
I was the one who had to deal with like outside stuff, so there was like someone like kind of lurking or stuff like that, and I'm like a super non-confrontational person, so just like having to get over like that shyness was like a really big challenge for me to like ask for things.
I kind of kept everything that I did musically to myself, and so just up in conversation it came up, and so I sent him the song I was working on, and he was like, can you please do the theme song? And I was like, okay, like sure, and I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. It took about like 5 different songs to finally get to this one.
I felt very like overwhelmed, I guess, from the start. I've never done anything like this before. I had to figure out what props were needed, where we were going to source them from, the color palettes for each scene, how we were going to incorporate that into each scene, and basically then just making all of that happen and acquiring everything that we would need.
Most difficult setup for me was shooting the scene where they are having breakfast right before they go to the Aces field for tryouts. That one was the most difficult, providing power for all of the huge lights that we had going. We had to, find all those power sources and things like that, setting up a huge 12 by 12 frame and then keeping it roped down in the wind so it's not, getting anyone injured.
So just like having to hold this thing above your head for hours at a time, like all day long, like 3 days in a row. And I definitely don't want to do that professionally.
Nothing. Hold for plane.
Any production is plagued with issues like we show up and the location is not ready, we don't have our people together, our crew isn't ready to set up things. And it's just kind of, the art in directing is how well you can roll with those kind of things. And that's what I love about it too, it's just kind of problem solving. It's like you take all the problems that are given to you and you try to come up with solutions that will get you through the day.
Working with children is always challenging. We went down that route. Then we added some more complexity because of having to work with the client in terms of having to work with sports. So we had two issues that were difficult. One of them sports and the other one children.
It's hard to, I think, organize with that many people because you've got parents with their kids have things like school, spring break, outside activities, and a lot of them need more than like 2 weeks to plan that because some of them had vacations when we were shooting, and it's kind of a mess. But I was definitely happy with the last day, the big game day. We had a pretty good turnout for that.
Sometimes when you're working 12 hours a day, it does get gruesome. And yes, you have to deal with it.
It was very difficult at times showing up at 6 a.m., 5 a.m. just to get everything set up, and then at the end of a long weekend you just unload that entire van into here just to do it all again in a week. So yeah, it was rough, but it was worth it.
It was unlike anything I've definitely done before. Much larger scale, much bigger cameras, much bigger crew, a lot of different elements to work with, but it was a big learning experience for sure.
It very much felt like what I would imagine a real film crew would be.
It gave me good communication skills, I'd say. I've sent more emails and texts this semester than any other semester.
Going into it, I knew nothing at all. I took one very short class about, very simple lighting setups and things like that. And now, he can tell me a super complicated setup and I know exactly what to do.
Through doing 30 pages of script, I just know now so many different things that I didn't know when we started, especially creatively, logistically.
I feel confident now actually going into production because I've worked with a crew of this large, and going into like any leadership role, whether it's like a manager or boss, like I feel more comfortable going into that now.
This class really did help in the way that I communicate with my peers, and especially during challenging times and frustrating situations. In the heat of the moment, when you don't know how to control yourself, how to control your temper.
I learned a lot about myself just as a leader, being able to, take control of the crew, give direction in a way that, is effective and fast moving.
It went really well, I think, especially for everybody's first time. Obviously, it's a massive undertaking for students of any school, but I think we pulled it off. I think it really did come out how we envisioned it. Not originally, though. I think this whole project has changed drastically through the course of it. So it's evolved from what we started out with to what we ended up with.
We were able to develop a very complex shoot, so anything we shoot with a lesser degree of complexity really fits into what we can do, into our wheelhouse. I don't think there's a single person in this crew that has not been transformed from the day we began to the day we finished this course.